to Connect Church today. Actually, Connect Church from home again. Thank you so much for opening your home to me, to us this morning. If you don't know, we are broadcasting from Farmington, Minnesota. That's part of the greater Minneapolis-St. Paul area. Man, it finally feels like full-blown spring here in Minnesota. It's been a long time. It's been a bit rainy, but I'm not going to complain. It's been warm. I got out on my bicycle, got to ride the gravel roads out by Neesville. Give me a thumbs up if you know where that is. That is small town Minnesota trivia for you. If you are joining us for the first time this morning, please drop your name and just drop us a line down in the comments. We would love to know who you are, get to know you. You are important to God. You are important to us. And we just want to make sure that we're in contact with you and that we know that you're doing okay. Everybody's important to us, though, whether you're a first-time visitor or not. So we welcome all of you this morning on Facebook or on YouTube. I'd also invite you just please take a moment, if you've not done so already, to like us on Facebook or on YouTube. That gives you the link to the latest updates and latest videos that come out. Kids, you are invited and encouraged to join us at 10:45. So in a few minutes about 20 minutes after this ends on Zoom platform, the link will be posted in the description. If you're on YouTube, it will be posted in the comments at the end of this message. Along with the password. A password is required now. Kids, join us at 10:45 a.m. Adults, hop on right after that with us. After the kids give us just a time to interact and kind of debrief on what's going on in your life over this past week. Also a reminder that at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, again on Zoom, we delve into what we've talked about this morning, just a little bit more in depth and how to apply this to your life or to our lives. If you'd like an invite to that, please let us know. All of our contact information is on our Facebook page and on our website. We would be happy to get you the link to that Wednesday night small group meeting. The Apostle Paul over the past few weeks has had some really relevant things to say to us, in general, but particularly in light of our pandemic. It's been just so relevant. It's amazing how God works in those ways. He's going to continue with us this morning in giving us insight and guidance on how to navigate life and how to navigate this pandemic. So let's jump in and see what Paul has to say to us this morning. Finals are finally over for my middle schooler. Yes. She did great on all her subjects, but she and I spent a lot of time reviewing math, particularly geometry. We went over problem after problem. We went back through the book and their questions. We studied the review sheets and the practice exams. We studied and applied and wrote down the formulas. We did together everything that we could. It was a lot of work. I was going to earn every bit of that grade that she did. What was your nerve-wracking final? I mean, I was just as nervous for her as she was. What was your nerve-wracking test or exam or final? Drop it in the comments below. It could have been a school exam. It could have been something like a driver's ed exam, whatever it might be. Maybe waiting a test of a medical exam. I don't know. Drop it in the comments below. But on the day of her final exam this past week for math, after all this work we had done, it was time to turn her loose. I had done all that I could. It was now up to her to put into practice what we had worked so hard over those days getting prepped for. it was up to her if she was going to pass this exam or fail this exam. I couldn't do anything about it at exam day. And man, it was nerve-wracking for both of us. All of her work and my work that we had poured into this together, was it going to pay off? So as she was taking that exam, I was pacing the kitchen here in our home back and forth. I don't know who was more nervous. Was she more nervous or was I more nervous? Paul, Saint Paul, the Apostle Paul, is experiencing the same sort of thing this morning in Philippians chapter 2. I'll give you just a moment to turn there. Philippians chapter 2, particularly verses 12 through 18. So Philippians 2, 12 through 18. We're going to do it a little bit different this morning. I'm not going to take the time to actually read through it straight through. We're just going to kind of walk through it. So it's not going to be up here in one big chunk on your screen today. And I'll be using the English Standard Version, the ESV version, if you want to follow along with me. But like my daughter, it was time to turn this church in Philippi loose for Paul. Paul was not there. Remember, he's in prison elsewhere, whether in Ephesus or whether in Rome, wherever he was in prison. He can't be there right now at this time or in the immediate future. Remember, we looked at this. So Paul is telling you, it's time for you to figure this out for yourselves. I can't be there to walk you through the practice exams. I can't be there to show you the way. I can't be there to hold your hand anymore. You need to do this for yourselves, okay? It's a nervous time for Paul as he hopes and prays that all the work that he has poured into these people and this church will pay off. So therefore, verse 12, therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, so now, not only in my presence, but much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Therefore, because of all that Jesus has done, because of what we have seen up to this point in chapter 2, continue your obedience in the Lord. Apparently, they had been doing a good job. Apparently, they had been living this out. Keep it up. Come on. Let's go. All right, you got it. Keep it up. All right. It's Paul's Newt Rockney's Notre Dame speech. Win one for the Gipper. Or if you're into airplane, it's Dr. Rumack's speech. Just win one for the zipper.
And win just one for the zipper.
If you like Airplane, which I love that movie. But this continued obedience in chapter 12, verse 12, is work out your own salvation. Make this entire church thing. Make this entire church endeavor, this new way of life that we have talking about, this new way of living, this new way of humanity, if you will. Make it work. This is what it means to work out your salvation. It's got nothing to do with, like saving your souls or personal holiness or individual salvation, or what does it mean to be saved. It's not individualistic. It's in the sense of, this wonderful gift of salvation that Jesus has given to you as a group. Make it work. Live it out. This humble servant attitude that we talked about, that Paul wrote about back in earlier in chapter 2, verses 6 through 11, this model that Jesus has given us, live it out. Do it. Okay? This new way of life, this new way of thinking, this new way of being human, make it real in your church. Make it real among yourselves. Figure out what it looks like amongst yourselves, because I am not there right now to help you, okay? Make this work. Figure it out. Do it, verse 12, with fear and trembling. Why fear and trembling? Paul actually likes this phrase. He uses it with some regularity and he uses it in different ways. But if we think about the Old Testament, whenever God himself appears, it usually causes the people to fear and to tremble in his presence. So maybe what Paul has in mind is something like, because God is with you, verse 13, because God is in your very midst, you should be fearfully and with trembling working this out. God is right there. Work this out. He isn't among you. He is with you. He is in you. Work this out. There's kind of a sobering effect to this. It's not like God's going to check in on you at some day. It's that God is right there with you now. Make this work. On the other hand, too, and maybe it's both, but it's like you can work this out. You can figure this out. Thumbs up, keep going, because God is right there with you. I'm not. I'm in prison, but God's there. You can do it. Come on. Maybe it's both. Paul's good at kind of weaving both of those, a little sobriety, a little gravity to the situation with some excitement that God is there. All right, Connect Church, or whatever church you are part of, joining us from wherever, work out this new way of thinking, which transforms you, transforms your living. Remember, thinking goes into living. Figure out what it looks like right here in Farmington, Minnesota. Figure it out what it looks like. Figure out what it looks like in Farmington or Lakeville, Rosemont, Apple Valley, Bloomington, or wherever you're joining us from. St. Paul, I can't be there to hold your hand. I can't be there to do it for you. But you are smart people, filled with the Spirit. God is in your very midst. So work it out. Figure it out for yourselves. See, and the helpful thing for them, for the Philippians, and for us today, is that Paul just doesn't leave it there. He doesn't just say, just figure it out for yourselves, figure it out what it looks like in your context, but he says, figure it out, and here are some pointers. Here are a couple of ways to do that, to guide you, okay? And let's look at that. All right, verses 14 and following. First, verse 14, do this, figure this out, this salvation, without grumbling or questioning, or grumbling and disputing, or grumbling and arguing, something along those lines. And I tend to read this, or often read this section and think, all right, yep, absolutely, of course. I shouldn't grumble. I shouldn't argue. I've got it good. I need to stop those things. Negative thinking, no whining, no fighting, cut it out. Just plow through. That's true. That's absolutely true. Nobody likes a whiner. But this is so much deeper and more serious than simply being labeled as a whiner or a complainer or a grumbler, or a nod that it's not nice or polite to grumble and complain. Again, Paul has something in mind from the Old Testament. Okay, if you go back to the Old Testament, to the book of Exodus, the second book of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, that entire book is fraught with this story of the Hebrew people as they're leaving Egypt, as they're embarking on this journey out of Egypt, this so-called Exodus. They grumble and they complain regularly. They grumble and complain against each other. They grumble and complain against their leader Moses and his brother Aaron. They grumble and complain against God. It literally tore them apart. And it led to their inevitable kind of not inevitable, but it led to their downfall. Have you ever been in an argument or a discussion where it's clear that you're not going to get your way, or you're not going to win, and so you're finally like, all right, fine, give me that, I'll do it. Beep. And Paul says, don't do that, all right? Don't yank the paper out of the other person's hand and say, I'll do it, I'll comply, but I'm not going to like it. I'm going to grumble, I'm going to complain, I'm going to cuss you out underneath my breath as I do it. That's not thinking differently. That's not working out this new way of life, working out this new salvation that Jesus gives to us. Okay? This grumbling and arguing, just like it did with the Hebrews, it threatens the togetherness and the unity of this new little church, of Connect Church, of any church that you're a part of. Grumbling and arguing threatens what it means to work out our salvation. It alienates people from each other, and it alienates people from God. Okay, grumbling and arguing is horizontal and it's vertical. It drives a wedge between people, it drives a wedge between people and God. Grumbling and complaining. You know, when Christians start slinging mud, even under their breath, but particularly publicly, man, no good ever comes of that. Never. Now I've mentioned before that there have been numerous times, particularly lately, that I'm really wanted to lash out or post something on Facebook or on Twitter or reply to somebody for all sorts of reasons. Fortunately, I think I've refrained from doing so, or my wife has physically refrained me from doing so. Do you know who Herm Edwards is? Herm Edwards was a former football coach for the Jets, the New York Football Jets. He's the current Arizona State football head coach. And he's got this great little saying for his football players, for his college football players, and their interactions on social media. It's just 3 words.
You see that button right there? You know what it says? Don't press send. Don't do it. Don't press send.
Don't press send. Don't press send. Okay? His point to his players are don't react on social media out of anger. I love that. Don't press send. How many of our problems could be avoided if we didn't press send? Okay? I love that. Sometimes I've got to stop, log off, take a breath, and think. I got to think differently. What good is my response going to accomplish? Is it just another opinion floating out there? Why do I care if my opinion is out there? Nobody else does. It's probably the little bit of narcissist in me. That's my confession for this morning. I need to care less about getting my opinion out there, okay? And this isn't just arguing in the sense of sometimes we just disagree. That's a given. We as a church are going to disagree. Christians are going to disagree. We are going to see things from different angles, different perspectives. We're raised differently. We come at things from different perspectives and different angles, and that's fine, okay? But when we see things from different perspectives with the mind of Christ, we are changed. We don't attack people personally. I may disagree with you, but I'm not going to hurl personal insults at you, even under my breath. Disagreeing is fine. It's good in some cases. It leads us to think and to expand our horizons and to look at problems from different directions. It's how we disagree. Are we disagreeing in ways that drive wedges between us as a church and us and God? Or are we coming together through our disagreements? We can say, all right, Josh and I are disagreeing on this. Fine. We'll step back. We'll pray. We might need to bring another set of eyes on this, but we're going to get back together and we're going to work through this. No big deal. Okay? We're both Christians. The Spirit is with us. The Spirit is working in us. We'll come back together and get this worked out. Or I can take the tact, all right, Josh and I disagree. Man, he's a jerk. I can't believe he thinks that way. He is an idiot. I can't even stand to be in the same room with him. I'm going to pray that God changes him. Which one is thinking differently? Which one is working out our salvation together? Wow! What if we actually followed Paul's instructions and thought differently and did everything, worked this salvation out and did everything without grumbling or fighting or complaining? How would this change us? How would this change our church? How would this change every church in the world, how would that change all of our relationships? And again, this isn't just I'll do it, but I won't complain publicly or grumble publicly or complain about it. But my entire attitude and approach is going to be different. I'm going to think differently. We're back to that again. We're back to thinking differently. We're continually coming back to that. My entire approach to this whole new way of life is that of Jesus in Philippians chapter 2, verses 6 through 11. And if you missed that, go back 1 week and watch that. Watch that message. It's having that mindset of Christ, having that humble servant attitude and mindset. This is how I think. This is how we work out this new way of life. Now, verse 15's got some great stuff in it. We just don't have time to get into that. I'll simply say that Christians, the church, with this new way of life, with this new way of living, we shine Jesus' light as a lighthouse in the darkness. And it says, everybody come this way. This is the path. This is the different life. This is a different way to live. This is a different way to be a person. And it's bright and it shines in the world. Okay? So the way to work this out, to work out this new way of life, this salvation, instead of grumbling and complaining, is clinging to the word of life. Verses 16, clinging or holding fast to the word of life. Okay? This could be clinging to Jesus himself. We chatted about that a few weeks ago. Or it could mean clinging to the gospel of Jesus, which is life. I'm not really sure which, and it actually, I don't think matters. The result is the same. Keep coming back to Jesus and his gospel. Together, make this new way of life work in and among you. See, when we cling to the word of life, we think differently, and we end up living differently. It continually encourages us and even forces us to consider others, to consider their view, to consider their needs, their viewpoints. Again, go back to what we read earlier in the chapter. Okay, so if I'm at odds with someone, if I'm having trouble working this out, what do? Well, instead of listing the reasons why I'm right and stewing about it and thinking about why the other person is, geez, they're just totally wrong, maybe I take a step back and say, why do they think the way that they do? What are really they feeling and saying? What can I learn? How can I pray about this? Maybe I need to get some wise advice from someone else, a third party. Not a yes man. Don't look for a yes man. That doesn't help. You don't need somebody to affirm automatically what you say, but to challenge, to help you see it help me see it from a different perspective. Then I can come back. We can come back and work out our salvation, work this out. We can make this new way of life work together. See, and this is our point for this morning. Together. We can make this new way of life work because God works in us. Together, make this new way of life work because God works in us. See, Paul writes in verse 16, we read most of that, holding fast to the word of life, so that in the day of Christ, like judgment day, when Jesus comes again, I may be proud that I did not run in vain or labor in vain. Show me by working out this salvation, by making this new way of life work in your church, that all my work among you, all my blood, sweat, and tears that I poured into you wasn't a waste of time. I mean, that's kind of what Paul's getting at. Show me by your way of life as a church as a whole that all my work wasn't a waste of time, that you can pass the math exam. And she did. My daughter passed the math exam. Yes, I can pass 6th grade geometry. In this, I can rejoice. Paul says, work at this, because even though I expect to see you again, I might not. The whole outcome of my trial, this Roman trial that I'm about to endure, is still up in the air, okay? So get this new way of life figured out so that if I do come to see you, we can rejoice together. We can rejoice that you have figured this out together. You know, this is just as much a part of Paul, this church, as them, that they will rejoice in this together as they figure this out. And so we're back all the way to chapter 1, joy. Joy, joy in proclaiming Jesus. Joy in figuring this out, in being a light to the world. Together, make this new way of life work because God is working in you. I'll repeat it. Together, make this new way of life work because God is working in you. See, at the end of the day, this is so important for us. Paul wants us to think for ourselves with the mind of Christ and allow it to change our living. Think for ourselves with the mind of Christ. Together, make this new way of life work because God is working in you. It's the parent who is not always going to be there for the child when it's tough decision time. You know, we as parents can't always be there for our kids. At some point, our kid is going to have a tough decision and we're not going to be there to guide them. They need to make decisions for themselves. Okay? Paul doesn't want us just to follow his instructions like automatons or robots or robots, if you watch the Goldbergs, but to think with the mind of Christ. Do it for yourself. Work this out yourself. There's a different way to live, and you need to figure out what that looks like in your context. As you do this, and as you do this well, you will shine like a light, like a lighthouse, like a beacon, showing other people ways to live and to live differently. Together, make this new way of life work because God works in you. Amen. Kids, I will see you shortly at 10:45 on Zoom. Adults, we'll see you just a few minutes after that. We'll chat, debrief, catch any prayer requests, any praises, anything like that. The link and the password can be found below. I will see you soon, and Lord willing, I'll see you Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on Zoom as well. Many blessings this week. May the peace of Christ and unity reign in your hearts. Amen.